we're on. This is actually the first time we're on, and I have done a webinar together. So this will be really fun for us as well. So I'm Lori Maison, and I have been an executive coach for a long time. When I started my professional practice, it was well before we actually had technology basically for everything. I tell sometimes folks in my company, like, hey, when I started working, we didn't even have email. And they're like, how did you even do work? How did anything actually get done? Which is really funny for us who have been around the block a few times. If you had told me early in my career that I would be giving a webinar on how to enable dynamic development through technology, I would have laughed my head off, because my focus has been on human development, human potential, leader growth. And it's been a very interesting career pathway to get to the point where that is blending with technology. So I'm actually super excited around how we use technology to enhance and enable and scale and grow some of the practices that I have been working with for the last 25, 30 years. Our purpose really at Sounding Board has been to not only create the world's best leaders through our services offering, but also to create the technology that not only allows these kinds of offerings at scale, but that also provides all of the metrics that you need to identify whether your programs are actually working or not. So you can go to the next slide. This is some of the current companies that are building dynamic leaders through Sounding Board. And today we're going to talk about a couple of things. So next slide, we're going to look at some of the strategic ideas that are behind this technology that we're developing. We're going to talk about how those play out kind of on a daily environmental basis in your organization, and then take a look at some technology that can really help you expand your leader development programs. And this is the very big picture view, which is when I started my career back in the last century. The environment was much more predictable and sort of linear. These days, we're really in this VUCA world: volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And we just know from the last few years that nothing's really predictable anymore. And then you add in some of these very big changes between the last century and this century. The acceleration of the need for leader development used to be you had 20 or 30 years to do that. Now we have less than 5 years. When I started, the population was very homogenous. And by homogenous, I basically mean white men. Yeah, sorry, Ron. The first 10 years of my coaching career, I only coached men. Why was that? Not because I wanted to necessarily coach men, but that's who was in the leadership positions in the Fortune 100 companies. So although we're making progress there, we haven't made maybe as much as I would have liked, but we are having a much more diverse work population these days that goes into, it creates a big factor for how leaders need to operate. Back then, of course, we were in office. Now we have a lot of varieties of way people are working. We had 2 generations in the workforce previously. Now we have 5 generations. the factors around women as leaders. And, it was the early days of the internet. We were still doing a lot of things on paper or paper spreadsheets, or voicemail. As I remember, we had a big binge of using voicemail instead of email for communication, because email wasn't a thing yet without phones and personal computers. And obviously, not only have we advanced dramatically since then, we are advancing very rapidly now when you start to think about AI and other current enhancements. So it's really a different world that we're delivering and developing leaders in these days. And guess what? Only 23% of business and HR's leaders think that their leaders are ready to deal with the current world that we're operating in. I'm sure that's probably not that much of a surprise to you all who are out there on the front lines, but I think it's kind of a striking metric. So we want to check with you. In your opinion, what percentage of your leaders have the capabilities necessary to manage disruption and change, really to manage in the current VUCA environment? You can go ahead and fill out your answers there, and we'll kind of see how your point of view is matching the metrics there. Wow. Okay. I give a very big kudos to the people who made it up to 50 to 74%. You probably should be doing a webinar yourself here to tell us how to do it, because look, really the majority of folks feel like their leaders really don't have the necessary capabilities for the current environment. And that's really the basis for Sounding Board and what we're doing. Yeah, I see the answers are still coming in here, so let's just wait a minute and see what happens. Oh my gosh, a couple people, maybe one person made it up to 75, so kudos to you. Okay, so good. So you can kind of see the need for a new kind of leader development. And so I want to talk a little bit about that once this poll is done. There you go. So in the past, we have focused primarily on skill development. That's the focus of a training approach to leader development. I think some organizations have moved into a capability approach. Sounding Board uses this with our coaching services that we provide. But we're suggesting that to really build dynamic leaders, you need programs and approaches that are building all three of these things: skills, capabilities, and capacities. And the way we think about this is skills are individual sets of behaviors that people can learn and deploy. They tend to be on the more tactical side, but they also can be some in leader development. But then the next level is the capabilities, combining sets of skills that you can utilize in conjunction with each other to be successful as a leader. So this is things like strategic thinking, like complex decision making, like conflict management, like vision and direction settings. It's not just one skill, it's a combination of skills that need to be applied in relation to each other. And then the third area really is capacity, and that speaks directly to our complex environment, which is you can have all the skills and capabilities, but if you can't apply them in your context, in the current situation that we have, and be able to be very fluid and have a capacity for mixing and matching those skills and capabilities depending on the situation, it's going to be hard to be successful these days. So we say, skills and capabilities can make good leaders, but it's really capacity development that makes exceptional leaders. We have a few other webinars that delve into this much more. So if you want to look at our website and find out more about skill, capacity, and capability development, take a look there. But for today, we're just going to suggest that our approach to dynamic leader development actually includes all three of these areas. And one of the things we see as critically important is both the context specific development and individual specific development. There's a rather shocking stat, which is only 1 in 10 participants in a training program actually applies anything that they learn to their real time work life. So this focus on transfer of learning, and we think it goes even farther than transfer of learning. It actually goes towards productivity, towards organizational outcome, towards goal development, requires the development to be specific to your context, not just generalized learning, and that there is kind of a personalization to it. Because these days, there's not just one way to be a leader. There's lots of ways to be a successful leader. And the most successful leaders are the ones that can combine who they really are authentically as a person with these skills, capabilities, and capacities to kind of create this unique mix of their personalized leadership style. So some of the approaches we like, coaching and mentoring approaches that are really human to human development, we think take the context and the person into account in their development. So mentorships, sponsorships, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, on-demand coaching, like in the moment. We find these to all have a return on investment that's anywhere between 200 to 500%. And the thing that's tough, how do you deliver all of this person-to-person development if you don't have a way to manage it? Hence the need for software. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to let me go one more slide. Sorry, business slide. So this is our idea on how a mix of modalities really help to create a much broader program of leader development for an organization. So you can take a look here, obviously mentoring, coaching on demand, peer-based learning, and we have an interesting thing called the Coach Curated Resource Library. Of course, you have all of your learning platforms out there, but it's like just a wealth of information that may be hard to sort through. And in leader development, we're looking for a very personalized access to resources that can be provided by your personal group or one-on-one coach. So it's very specific to you in your context. So I am now going to turn it over to my colleague who is the technology whiz, who is going to talk about what we're doing at Sounding Board. And I'll just leave with this thought. One thing that's very unique about us is all of our technology development has been designed with a human development frame of reference. So we're the only one that has a professional, 30-year executive coach leading the technology function to develop the kind of unique software that Ron is going to tell you about.
Awesome. Thanks, Lori. So I'm Ron Buell. I've been with Sounding Board for 2.5 years. And when I joined, the company was utilizing some, what I'll refer to as probably more rudimentary software for managing coaching engagements. And the mission for which I was hired originally was to take that and, essentially bring it into the current decade, if you will. And part of that was the roots of the company were founded, as Lori mentioned, on leadership coaching. A long history there, a lot of experience, a lot of learnings. And that was essentially, if you're looking at this slide, that was the foundation of our guide product. The goal was not only did we have, a really good idea around how to conduct leadership coaching. We like to think that we have the best coaches in the industry, but taking that knowledge, can we apply that to technology and then allow that for companies that have their own internal coach benches or utilize outside coach vendors to also take advantage of our software? And we spun that up at the same time when we launched almost 2 years ago now. And that is the Expand product. So that is more akin, for those of you with software background, very similar to like a SaaS software style model. We also offer what we like to think of as the best of both breeds, which is our Transform model. The Transform model is a unified experience for software where you utilize your own coach bench or your select coach vendors, as well as augmenting with the sounding board coaches. And all of this is in a single platform, single views. You're able to see all your data together, which we think is generally unique within the industry. I'm not sure who else is providing this kind of option. So next slide, Mary, please. And part of what we did when we built out the software was to really focus on 4 different areas: providing company-wide visibility, allowing the people that are writing the checks to be able to see how are their employees that are utilizing this performing. Are they engaged? Are they completing their surveys, et cetera, meeting with their coaches, performing in the mentoring programs, things like that. We also wanted to really build a simple user interface for those Expand customers and Transform customers that want to set up their own programs. So we have a step-by-step program builder. We've created templates, and it's a very simplistic way to go through and actually set up your coaching programs, your mentoring programs. You can target different capabilities, which Lori had mentioned earlier. What do you want a specific program to be drilled down at? So you might say, well, I really want to have this program focused on managers that are, we being the client company, have targeted to go to the next level of senior managers or directors. You can build a program for that. You can target the capabilities that you feel are pertinent to be able to make that leap with the guidance of your own internal coach bench, through mentoring or through content and all of the above provided. Additionally, and I'm having a really hard time reading this. I'm going to throw my glasses on. I apologize. Elevated, impactful user experiences. All right. So one of the things we did when we built this is, while we were very much an enterprise focused software company, we do have some great individuals within the product development team that have consumer background. So we have built a user experience that is very pleasing to the eye and really embraces some of those consumer benefits that you see, when you pull out your phone or whatever and order from DoorDash or things like that. You get to use that in our enterprise-based software. And we have everything from onboarding to assessments, surveys, notifications, and we have our proprietary leadership roadmap, which is really the one stop that you need within the software to track your entire leadership journey. In there, you can see how you're doing on your coaching engagements, how you're going along in your mentoring engagements, what kind of content you viewed. And it allows you to establish goals, create insights, and track actions that you've made over that. And there's a lot more to come in this summit, which I will talk about a little bit later in the program. Lastly, as I touched upon earlier, we not only support the use of sounding board coaches, we also, want to allow you to have the software to use with your own coaches. And if you choose to use outside coaching vendors, they're more than welcome to use the software as well. It's the same experience for everyone across the board. So next slide, please. All right. And we have a quick poll for you. So how are you managing your leadership development programs now? You can choose any one of these options, whether it's software, vendor, spreadsheet, manually, or something else. And if you're using software, we'd be super curious to know what software you're using. So if you could throw those names in the chat, that would be lovely. So I'll give you a moment to complete. Give it another few seconds.
Okay, interesting. There really is quite a variety of options there. Oh, the late front one, or people are using some kind of software, so that'd be interesting to see what that was. But equal or closely equal number of people are doing it all manually. We've found quite a bit that even very large enterprise companies may be actually still using paper to manage some of these things, and certainly spreadsheet use is pretty high as well.
Yeah, this is really interesting to see that we have equal numbers of manually and software. So
yeah.
for those of you that are in the other manually or spreadsheet world, hopefully this webinar is providing some good information for you. And for those of you that are on software, hopefully you're on our software. But if you're not, hopefully we provide you a good view of what is different and available out there on the marketplace.
And definitely love to see if you're using software, what software you're using. So feel free to post that.
Yeah. Okay, Mary.
Next slide.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to Ron's going to drill down a little bit on each of the areas of the software so you can get a little bit deeper view into that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was absolutely my intent. One of the things that we have heard continually, and I think is part of the new world that Lori was talking about, is how do I know whether I'm getting a return on investment from the money that I'm putting into developing my next generation of leaders? And we took that very seriously to heart. And so we've developed a wide variety of analytics and reports that drill into things like, how are your coachees doing? Are they engaged in the programs? How many sessions have they been through? Are they on track? Are they off track? We look at things like survey completion rates. So, we have a standard cadence of surveys that go out during your engagement. And again, we allow for some customization there as well. I don't want to go too far into the implementation details, but one of the benefits of the platform is we do provide a high degree of customization and configurability for your needs. Additionally, we have onboarding metrics. We have a whole onboarding process that everyone goes through. And then we look at satisfaction. So we do have a proprietary matching algorithm that we use for both our coach matching as well as our mentor matching. I'm going to talk a little bit about AI later on, but that does utilize some artificial intelligence. And then we also track NPS scores. So how happy are our users, not only with their engagements with their coaching or with their mentoring, but also with the software experience overall. I mentioned development and ROI measurement. So not only is ROI, are my people engaged? Are they using the software? That's a very good sign. If your utilization rate is 30% of the coaching that you paid for, that's not generally a very good ROI. Our numbers tend to run about triple that. But with the, surveys, we get a lot of information around how is the relationship, how is the coaching engagement progressing? Are the coachees benefiting from their coaching experience? Are they, growing their skill set and their capabilities? Are we preparing them for that next jump? And so we have a variety of different graphs. If you want to jump to the next slide, there you go. Thank you, Mary. That we look at. And again, Lori mentioned earlier our leadership capabilities. So as I had mentioned previously, you can assign the leadership capabilities to a program, and then we can actually track against those leadership capabilities through the use of the surveys, as well as feedback that we also get from both the coaches and the managers. And that was that information there. I also talked about the user interface for how we create programs. Again, this is a very step-by-step. You can kind of see it in there. We start with a simple onboarding. We go through, we identify the types of programs, the capabilities you want to add to them. We have simple ways to add users. We also, in terms of the overall onboarding, which isn't pertinent to this slide, but you can bulk upload users into the system. And then you can actually use bulk assignment into various programs. We also allow for the use of templates, and so that you can reuse a specific program over and over again with slight modifications. I also mentioned the leadership roadmap. This is our proprietary dashboard, if you will, that we've built that is essentially your home for your leader journey. And it really, one of the foci when we built this was agility. So, being a longtime software engineer, I've been practicing agile development, I think probably since about 2002, coming on 20 years. And now agile is business-wide. It's not just for product development. So we take that into consideration when we built this leadership roadmap. The other beauty of this is, you can share this leadership roadmap with who you want to share it with. You can share it with your manager, or you can choose not to. So one of the things that we also take very seriously at Sounding Board is privacy. And we want to put the control of what data is seen by whom in the end user's hands. So, whether you're a coachee or a mentee, you get to control that. And people might ask, well, how do I, if someone is shutting down the visualization of their information, their personal information, we do anonymize and aggregate, and that does get rolled up into the reports that I mentioned earlier. So we do protect privacy in doing that. Lastly, I mentioned that, we built this not just to support Sounding Board coaches, but also your internal coaches and any, outside coaching vendors that you may choose to work with. the integration of that into the platform, the experience really is no different than what we provide for sounding board coaches. So it's a very, it's the straight same onboarding for your coaches as well as our coaches. The coachees and the mentees and the mentors all have similar experiences. We have a very simple calendar syncing process where your company connects with the calendaring system with your calendaring system, and then when you go to schedule a session, you can see both individuals' calendars and what times are available, and you actually you just are shown the times that actually work for both parties. And lastly, the reporting that I had mentioned earlier is aggregated just as it is for the other types of entities that we have on the platform. I also mentioned artificial intelligence. That seems to be the buzzword that's hot everywhere, not just within the leadership development industry. And Lori made a very good point earlier in the conversation here, is that we are human first. And so when we were developing our AI strategy, we took that to heart. So what we've done is we've developed 4 different paths in the AI space that will allow us to augment that human-based development. The first area of AI that we're focused or have been focused on now for well over a year is efficiency. Things like improving our coach matching algorithm and utilizing clustering and other types of areas. We do actually, in the coach matching algorithm, we have a success rate of 97% there right now, which part of that is due to the intelligence of folks like Lori and others in the company who understand what are the right things to look for in terms of building an algorithm, but then also layering on the artificial intelligence on top of that has taken it even higher. It was at 93%, now it's at 97%. So that's something we're very proud of. Personalization is the next area that we're actually working on right now. And that is building, real-time personalized recommendations for the coachees. Things like goals in your leadership roadmap, insights out of the content of some of the sessions you may have had, or content that you have read, things along those lines. And this will apply, first to the coachees, but we're also targeting how we can use the recommendations for coaches, for managers, basically for all stakeholders. Then beyond that, we're moving into the intelligence area. Really looking at deep analytics, predictive analytics, how we actually take what we've learned, apply it to the global LLM space, and come back and, confidently be able to forecast things along the lines of, what's the next set of content for this particular individual to take, things along those types of lines. And then lastly, we have the connection area within our AI. And this is really interpersonal. Like, how do we facilitate better communication between everyone, whether you as a coachee and your manager, perhaps your CEO? How do we improve your coaching session? How do we improve your mentoring session? Looking at those kinds of interactive dynamics. So there's a lot going on there. Thank you very much. And I'm going to pass it off to Lori to talk a little bit about her book.
So I'm going to kind of wrap it up a little bit with Ron and myself. But during my coaching profession, where I saw a lot of organizations newly starting to utilize coaching as a development tool, one thing that's been very interesting is those engagements, say in the early 2000s or even 2010 to 15, they were being primarily managed by HR professionals, and those professionals were doing the matching and the engagement management. And having recently talked to one of those folks, that person told me that those engagements during that time were only around 40% successful. So the matching didn't work, but they didn't find the right coach for the right individual, or the utilization was very low. They maybe had a few sessions and then it dropped off. So one of the things I've been really pleased to see is how technology can help change those metrics. If to go from a say 40% matching rate to over 90% matching rate is really quite incredible. Same with utilization, to have utilization be under 50% versus sounding board utilizations over 90% as well. That's a testament to the value of the coaching technology, that if you're going to really be deploying these programs, you should make sure they're actually successful by having technology that can help you do that. There was a question in here around capabilities versus abilities, and that is probably a good lead into the book. So I have a new book out. It just came out on October 3rd, and it's really talking about how this century is so much different in terms of leader development than the past, and how to really get up to date with your approach to leader development. We use the word capabilities because we think capabilities are learnable and trainable and developable. Many people use the word ability to be kind of more of an intrinsic ability, like I have creative ability, or I have sort of God-given abilities. So we're just using the word capability to distinguish that this is something that can be learned versus something that you came to this lifetime with. It sounded like, Ron, you had something else to say with that.
No, actually I didn't.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. So just encourage you to take a look at the book. It's gotten some pretty good reviews, and I think it has lots of interesting ideas for enhancing and making more dynamic your current leader development programs.
Yeah. I will actually jump in just with a quick plug. Having been here 2.5 years, having done leadership development coaching before I came to Sounding Board, and knowing the real benefit of that, working with Lori, and kind of seeing firsthand how she operates is a pretty good clue into the content of what's in this book. And it's how she actually approaches running a company. And there's so many direct correlations between how we do things at Sounding Board and how leaders can grow during their journey. Certainly, I could have used this 20 years ago. I'm sure that's true for a lot of people. But so, yeah, I would strongly recommend getting it out there, reading this book. And, if you're not actively involved in coaching, I would give you a big plug for that, regardless of how you do it.
Great. Thanks, Ron. Appreciate that. Well, that's it for our particular programming. Interested if there's any questions that we could speak to. So I'm going to let the moderator jump in and help us work on that part.
Fantastic. Well, Lori, Ron, first of all, thank you so very much for really opening what is a kind kind of a precipice moment in the evolution of our world. I think you're so very right, Ron. The idea, and Lori, that the idea of AI really changing the way that we work, and to your point, Lori, the idea is that the way we developed leaders in the late 1990s, really many of the pieces are still in play, but many of them have changed quite dynamically. And so what got us here is not what's going to get us there, to your point. And so all the more reason for the automation. Yes, please jump in.
Oh, no, I'm just agreeing with you completely.
Fantastic. I want to thank you both for bringing this topic to the table, but also putting a spin on it that allows our listeners and our members to really start thinking about how they can take their leader development really firmly into the 21st century with the technological revolution that's going on, with the increasingly VUCA environment that you talked about, and many of the other macro environmental changes that you brought in. Certainly being able to have solutions that are scalable and that can be plugged in at all levels at this point, knowing that development really has to be lifetime development. It really can't be at certain levels anymore, that we really need to be able to find ways to do this. So thank you both very much for stringing together the introductions of this space and bringing it into the technology space. I want to thank our listeners for joining us today as well. And I want to remind our members that our webcast today has been approved for HRCI and SHRM credit, and also for HCI recertification. Your credits for attending our webcast and discussion with Lori and Ron here today will soon show up in your My HCI profile under the transcript tab. And while you're there, don't forget to check out hci.org for even more insights, as well as information on our certifications, virtual conferences, premium membership, and more. And I'd just like to say one more thank you to Lori and Ron at Sounding Board, and to the good people with Lori and Ron at Sounding Board. We're so grateful to have you here with us today. We'd also like to thank our webcast viewer, you. Thank you for spending the hour with us. We'll see all of us next time.